Good, so works. Morning, everybody. Thanks, Nigel. That's a very timely workshop, as I was just telling you. And you will see that in a minute. I'd like to start with this very first slide, very generic one, to get us into this business of climate change service. There are a few keywords there which do matter for the work we do, providing ACVs. And there is this idea of behind everything of not only dealing with forecasts, but also climate monitoring. So we are definitely in business here. Now, the overall aim of this service is to become one authoritative source of climate information for Europe. So it's a very ambitious goal. That's probably something that that will be, driving all the efforts we are going to place into that service. It will be organized around trying to answer three questions. How is the climate changing? And that goes through, observations and reanalysis exercises. What's the rate of change? Through forecasts and projections, and what are the societal impacts dealing with climate indicators, sectoral information. So it's sort of, three big topics give you an idea about where we stand when we talk about observations. We are, dealing with one important aspect of this climate change service. Do you hear me okay in the back? Yeah? Okay, thanks. Now, the way the system has been organized is shown on that slide. You have basically 4 building blocks. I'm going to show you everything here. Right. So the first one is a climate data store, where basically we deal with geophysical quantities. Here we are in geophysical units, sort of thing that you know and that you are familiar with. So not only observations, but also reanalyzed fields, forecast projections. And this is the main source of information for designing a sectoral information system. Basically, it means going from the geophysical information to something palatable to policymakers, so that people can easily understand, indicators, sort of things. And then we'll be able, to, with that, support, member states and sort of users. Obviously, different DGs from the Commission. This is Commission thing, so it has to be useful for some of the Commission services. And the big one is obviously DG Klima. DG Klima is leading the discussions, high-level discussions for sort of Kyoto Protocol, UNFCCC sort of things. Now, beyond these 2 blocks, it was very important to consider having this one, which is an evaluation quality control function. So this basically comes very well with sort of questions you're asking in this workshop. We want to make sure that the quality of what we do is something we can demonstrate and something that is built on solid grounds. And last but not least is about outreach and dissemination. As you know, it's a very important component of the climate change discussions to make sure that people understand what it means, people understand what we do. And, for the 7 years we have, or 6 years, we have to put all that in place and make it working. The big challenge is to demonstrate that we are actually useful in achieving something such that in the next MFF we get the appropriate resources to keep going on. This is a slide I'd like to show as well. This is about, this component here, the climate data store. There's a bit of technicalities behind it, but the main idea is, to have this climate data store acting as a broker. And the key thing is, I was not in favor of selecting only one sort of data set to be, accepted or working with this climate service, but you have a series of them. And the climate data store will be basically brokering on this existing data set. So it means we may slightly change our views of the system. Existing services like marine atmosphere, they are basically based on one sort of data sets here. Things are going to be a bit different. An overview of the timing things we are talking about. So we are about here. We are at stage 0. Stage 0 is a proof of concept. We try to put in place all the things, make sure it works. We'll be doing some real internal testing at stage 1. That's for 1 year, what we call the pre-operational phase for 3 years. 2018, we should start going public. So this is where we life will be a bit more risky. And we've been separating these two stages. Basically, they simply differ by number of ECVs we'll be addressing. So ECVs we are considering as a start, and so, although you can see it's very ambitious, are listed here. It's not something absolutely cast in stone, but it's giving us a direction of what we think we should have as a minimum set of variables to have something to say about climate change. All of them should sort of relate to this different information system, and we have to realize that people at the commission level or policy-making level do understand only these things. These they don't understand and don't really care, by the way. So we have to be smart, in articulating whatever is done here at that level with this sort of applications we have. So this is for this stage 2, and the idea is to get one more step into the process to end up with something like, let's say, I don't know what's total here, but this sort of extra ECVs coming at a later stage when the system has been showing, its virtues, in doing the work it's supposed to do. Again, this new ECV should relate to this. So gives you a flavor. I think no big surprise on what you can expect from a climate change service. Again, the big word here is operational, and we're not going to do anything like research. Research is H2020 business. We can do obviously some R&D around the service for the benefit of the service, right? So don't misunderstand me. I'll show you a little bit of the organization, the way it will work. So the Commission has been delegating the operation of the service to ECMWF. I guess you all know that. That was officially signed in November last year. So ECMWF is now implementing the things. The way it works technically is that ECMWF is providing every year a work plan, which we analyze. We'll get the support of an expert panel to tell the Commission how good is that, and what are the limitations, what are potential improvements of a blue ribbon panel, if you like. And they will also have a look at the annual activity reports. So ECMWF is going to put in place these building blocks, climate data store, sector information system, and this evaluation quality control function. So this one is going to be driven by ECMWF. It's really part of the service. And then the outreach dissemination component. So that will go to a portal. There will be interaction with users here via what we call user forum and Copernicus committees. That's member states representation. That gives, the possibility of our colleagues to raise their voice and express, whatever thing they would like to have. And that extra component here is coming from, basically customer DGs, member states, to provide high-level recommendations on how the system could improve or what it should be doing extra that it doesn't do yet. Now, this is another important component. It's FOP, stands for Fitness for Purpose. This is a component outside of the ECMWF. It's driven by the Commission, and it will be basically organized by the GRC here, and one of the DGs that we have, to basically check that, for instance, these DGs are happy with what we produce. That's a very important thing. And also being ready to sort of check on the quality of what is provided to users. So now I'm going to show you a little bit of what they are supposed to, what the main functionalities are. This is for the FOP component. We'll be always checking high-level recommendations from policy DGs, perform validation, benchmarking, intercomparison activities as desired. And that's, again, Commission-driven thing, right? That's, for instance, you may consider the expert panel may have some remarks on whatever and want to double-check actually what's going on there. It's like a consumer protection thing, if you like. Changing the selection of data methods and models to make sure, that every time we produce something, we're actually, getting the best of what's available operationally from, for instance, different algorithms. We are going on the way for, 7 years, so it's very unlikely that the selection of algorithm we have today will be, the best one in 7 years' time. and so on and so forth. An important component is this one. We have to make sure we have good relationship with, obviously, this evaluation quality control function. We don't want to work in isolation mode, and that's not exactly like a dog watcher function. I mean, it's really to help and to make sure that we do the best we can. The EQC function itself is more like making sure a number of things are done, that, for instance, the information is fully traceable and adequately documented. That's a very important component when you produce climate information, to make sure that we can trace back, what we say to something which is really tangible and could be demonstrated. Give sufficient attention to assessment of uncertainties. Obviously, a big thing with climate. Make sure we understand all these questions, and I'll come back in a minute on this, on my view at least, on these things. When it tells scientific quality, and you can read that, and it's relatively straightforward. But again, making sure that there is good link with this function, the F4P function. So that will be basically this sort of terms of reference, if you like, that we have for ECMWF to implement. So it gives some good opportunities, obviously, for this community here and this workshop to find ways, what it is that we should do, what it is that we should recommend ECMWF to do, and what it is that the Commission should also consider that ECMWF will not be doing, in checking the quality of the products. So some concluding words on algorithm products. Here I'm going to focus essentially on the observation thing, and this is sort of maybe a wish list of what I think we could consider as needed for making good job at the level of uncertainties. And that is to do with assessing the performance of inversion algorithm, confronting products against independent source of information whenever it's possible. That seems to be quite obvious when you read, but it's not that obvious when you look at the way we're actually implementing algorithm. And that's very different, in my view, from very similar exercise, round robin, where we basically compare products between themselves. That's probably more like a sanity check. It's something we need, but it's not the ultimate that we should consider doing. Checking the, as product concern, that is something also where when I was exposed to this question in my previous life, was always difficult to make sure we do it in a realistic manner. I mean, it is something to deal with complete theory, but then there are a number of things we don't really understand. So it's important to make sure the uncertainties are specified in a realistic manner. And here we may eventually consider moving to something which I found myself interesting, which we call conformity testing. It's more like ISO style of talking, but I think it's could be useful for us. For instance, you have seen that by acting as a broker, the CDS will give access to different data sets, and the point is not to get into something extremely accurate. The point is to get something that is conform to what we expect to be. That is, slightly different point of view, slightly different approach, maybe, and I'm sure here people know exactly what it means. So this performance of inversion algorithm, there are a number of ways of making sure that it's done, the way it should be, obviously end-to-end simulations. Again, I'm very fan of having direct mode, being verified. I mean, we have a number of algorithms running these days on different variables, while direct models basically have not been even benchmarked. And that's the reality of the situation we have to face. So this is quite useful, to make this sort of exercise, again, as a community exercise. And definitely the inverse mode should be in the frame of generating PDFs and not one single number. That must be clear for everybody. A little bit extra on that. I guess we should limit as much as possible the use of independent observation, the retrieval algorithm, to avoid some tuning, There are a number of these algorithms which are based on, for instance, what is considered as being the equivalent quantity coming from in situ data, which is hardly or barely the case. And it makes sense only if we have a statistically controlled environment. I mean, for instance, having a frame where we can penalize the solution if we are using, some sort of, for instance, in situ information. We should limit the use of black box algorithms. I mean, it's very hard to replicate a number of things based on, for instance, neural nets, where you have any sort of human intervention decision that cannot be replicated so easily by everybody. So I think we should be trying to capitalize as much as you know on what we know about physical processes, clearly. This to me is a very nice one. This is these closer experiments that have been conducted by Sila. We were talking about that yesterday with Anna and Pascal, and that's a very nice one. I mean, this is really best way to demonstrate that data sets are making sense. It's related to the consistency, which I mentioned here, the physical consistency, and this is really something very nice that we have to consider. I think physical consistency is also to be ensured yet, so that when we derive different parameters, they are done in a way that, for instance, aerosols and surface conditions, whatever they are, must be consistent between themselves. Clearly, there is nothing like one single solution for all sorts of questions we have, but we have to try getting to these sort of guidelines. I think, or I would suggest so. And then we could eventually, put that into something like a high-level quality product metrics. I don't know. I mean, there must be a way to, some sort of quantify these things about the quality of the products, following this sort of principle. I think I'm done with that. Yep. Thank you very much for your attention, and again, thanks for the organization of this meeting.